Welcome back to another episode of Boom or Bust, your home for NFL Draft Talk. I'm your host, Terry, and today we're looking at the interior linemen. Also, our real grade will feature the Oakland Raiders today, so any fans of the Black Hole, the Silver and Black, stick around at the end. We will go over the 2015 draft class of the Oakland Raiders. Alright, so as I start to get into this season and on the new podcast format, I am learning. After doing the first episode, I learned that it'd probably be better for me to go through these people and do some comments on them instead of just giving you a few people. Especially with the interior linemen, there's a smaller pool. So for the number of people that we were able to actually evaluate, we got 7, and of those 7, 6 are guards and only 1 is a center. That's typical of each year because if you just look at the history of interior linemen, as we know, they get picked later. They're not the most popular in the Pro Bowl, all that good stuff, linemen in general. But tackles got the left tackles got the sexy name right now because they get paid and they're the blindside protectors, and the interior line just gets left to the wayside. So that's typical, and it is what it is. So every year your pool of interior linemen usually is pretty small. That's why you lump them together. I mean, even if you got a number of centers that have tape, what usually happens is there's only a handful that get drafted. So it's not sense in, spending a lot of time on all these centers that probably won't make it. And the same thing for guards. You'll have studs sometimes, like we do this year, but overall it's not like 20 guards that are going to get drafted in the draft. So anyway, like I said, we got 7 people and we're going to go with that. And I got a controversial take. I'll say it right now. I'm not so sure Quinn Nelson from Notre Dame is my best guard of this year. I know he has been getting top 5, top 10 rankings and people just going nuts over him. And I do think he'll be a great guard. I think he'll be one of those people like a David DeCastro, Larry Warford, like those type of people that end up being the Pro Bowl guard you think they're going to be. But I'm not sure he's like a next level prospect. And so, but I'll get into that a little later. But first up is Quinn Nelson. So as I said before with the tackles, if you listen to that episode, offensive line, they all had the same gradable trait, run block, pass block, out of 5. And those are those are composed of a number of different things within the run blocking game and the pass blocking game. Now with the interior, I would say the only real difference is there's not so much focus on their ability to protect on the edge and one-on-one things of that nature. It's more so what's their ability to handle power in the interior of the line. Because as you know, the quickest way to quarterback is straight up the middle. So when you got big bullies or you got a lot of blitzes, you want to see what the lineman's ability to handle those blocks one-on-one or as a team. And so when we talk about sort protection, which is basically 90% of what you see in pass protection, where each person is kind of protecting their area. Now, sometimes you'll get big on big man protection, but you see that less in the league. So there's 2 type of ways of protecting, but what you usually see is sort protection. And so with that, it's like, what's their ability to recognize stunts and twists and blitz? What's their ability to switch targets? They might start off helping their right tackle or their center, and then somebody loops around. What's their ability to switch to another target? Different things of that nature. And so yeah, that's pretty much what you got. So for me, just looking at Quinn Nelson in general, some of the things I like, he does have elite power. This is a big dude. He's naturally stout, but one thing I noticed is that I don't know if he has natural balance. And I talked about this a little bit before, where if you see a lineman that's on the floor, on the ground all the time, that's a red flag. That's somebody that doesn't have balance or somebody that doesn't have power. And I thought Nelson was on the floor a little bit more than I liked. It wasn't all the time, but it was a little bit more than I would have liked. And so I've seen him in plays where he relies on his power. He bullies people. But when you go up against better linemen, there's people that knock him off balance. And so he leans a little bit onto them, or, he isn't really square with his block, and he can be thrown off by some power moves. So that's something I noticed. And then the biggest thing that with Nelson that kind of turns me off a little bit, I still think he's great, is that his hand placement is not as good as I thought it would be. Usually when you got top linemen, their hands are always in the right place. He likes to hug and grab a lot, and that's what you usually see with mid-tier to lower linemen, where they're grabbing, their hands always on the shoulder, or they're, trying to hug and throw people instead of actually block them and move them. And he's strong enough where he can move people just in general, but there's a lot of times where he's hugging like linemen or linebackers, and he doesn't have to. And so that kind of worries me a little bit. It's not to say that he's not going to be good, but then, as in the league, you could become some type of a penalty magnet. And if I'm going to say a guy's top 10 at guard, he better be clean. He better not have any of those issues. And so Quinn Nelson, for me, while he grades out great in a lot of things, his hand placement can be inconsistent. And then he's quick for his size. He's almost 330. Definitely quick for his size, but he's limited. As a puller, as somebody running zone, he's limited in the things he can do. Even blocking on the second level. Now he can get to the second level, but as far as screens and getting to the third level against a corner or safety, I think he's limited. And again, you can still be great. There's plenty of Pro Bowl guards that aren't getting down the field and making those type of blocks, but to be top 5, you really talking about an elite prospect. And so as much as he's getting that accolades, I'm not sure it's up there for me, but I gave him a level 4 in pass blocking. Again, he cleans house when he's helping. But I think his range is a little limited because he'll help out on a block, and then there'll be somebody twisting around or blitzing, and it takes him a little too long to switch to the target, and that can end up in sacks. So level 4 pass blocking, level 4.5 run blocking. I think he's really solid. Like, he's great at a lot of things, but he's just limited athletically. I didn't mean to stick on him too long, but he is the talk of the town. So then we jump down to Will Hernandez out of UTEP. Now, surprise, this is the guy that I think is better than Nelson. All the same things, except he doesn't have that issue with his hands. His hands are always in the right place. He's a power blocker, a lot like Nelson, where he's naturally strong, he's naturally stout, he can bully people, but he does work his technique. His hands are darn near perfect every time you see him. And I do think he has a lot more range than Nelson has. And he's going to weigh about the same or a little bit bigger than Nelson. So it's actually pretty incredible that he has a lot more range. His hips are more loose. He can pull better, and he can get to targets downfield better. And so while a lot of things are equal, I think those couple things put him over the top for me. And then he has a nasty attitude. And again, I talk about that a lot with linemen. He looks to finish blocks. Like, he goes to the whistle. If you watch Will Hernandez, and I can't remember the team. It was a bigger name team. I'll have to remember it, and you'll see it because he only has a few tapes. I think it might have been Arkansas or someone, but there's one play where he's blocking, and the D lineman, once the player is gone or once the play goes away from them, they give up. He's still blocking this dude, and he's hemming him up. He's got his hands all in his chest, and the D lineman is just throwing hands, and he can't get them off, and he gets mad and throws a punch, and then tries to complain to the ref. Like, he's holding me. Like, no, he's blocking you. Just because you gave up doesn't mean the play is over. So I love him. He has a lot of nasty attitude, and I think he might be the best guard in this group. Then we got Braden Smith out of Auburn. Oh, sorry, to go back real quick. Hernandez, I gave him 4.5 pass blocking, 5 run blocking. So very high grades. Braden Smith out of Auburn, he's a taller, guard for the position. I think he's good, but, again, some of the things with him, his feet aren't that great, and so he's pretty limited. And so when you're talking about protection, he's really, late switching targets, and he's not aware. There's players that look around, they look to find work, they understand what's going on. He's not one of those players. I think he really has issues in pass protection. And then in the run game, I like his hand placement, but again, he's just so limited because of his speed. And so that kind of knocks out a lot of things that he can do. And then the same thing with his height. He stands up too high. He's 6'6", and he doesn't play low enough. And so double teams and, run blocking, he's not effective because he can't move people because he's too high. So I gave him a 3.5 in both pass and run blocking. Shawn Welsh out of Iowa. I liked him, and there's some people saying that he might be a center. I don't know, but guard and center, there's a lot of the same things. He had a lot of average ability to me. He stands up a little too much. He's 6'3", but and that's what happens when you're short. You tend to think you can just stand up because you're already underneath people. But if you're not low, even if you're already short, if you're not bending and playing with some bend in the knees, it's going to be hard to drive block people off the spot. And so a lot of average things with him. I thought he was pretty good in the pass protection. I like him a lot more in the run game, where he can double team people. He can get to the second level. He's not a zone blocker, but he's definitely a power blocker. So I gave him a level 3 in pass blocking, level 4 in run blocking. Wyatt Taylor out of VTech, someone I really, really like. I really like this kid. I need to watch more on him, but I definitely think he's actually up there with Nelson and Hernandez. I think he's the tier right below them. So he does a lot of things well, and he works at a lot of things. I think he has very good athleticism, for his size, especially 6'5", 315. So pretty good size. I love him in protection. He's always looking for work. He understands exactly what he should be looking for and how to switch targets. He plays low even though he's 6'5". He anchors well, so he's naturally stout. I love his hand placement. And I'm telling you, with most linemen, the hand placement is the first thing I look at. His hands are always in the right place, and that's what helps him. And so in the run game, he's able to move people. He plays low and he puts his hands in the right place, and he can easily double team. I love all those things about him. And I think he's a great zone blocker. I'm actually liking him more than I talk about him, but I think he's very well rounded, athletic, strong, and good technique. So I gave him a level 4 pass blocking and a level 4.5 in run blocking. And then that's it for the guards. There's one more guard. That's Cody Okano out of Washington State. 6'9", 350, gigantic dude. Just a poor athlete. That's what it really comes down to. This guy is naturally strong. He's 6'9", 350. Of course, it's hard to move him. It's hard to get around him. But when you're talking about pulling or screens, going to the next level, zone blocking, any of that, he's not going to give you anything. And so you talk about guys like a Zach Banner from last year, even Orlando Brown from this year, where people ask, are they too big? Can they do anything on the line at the next level? And that's a question they're going to ask about Cody Okano. I gave him a level 3 for both pass and run blocking. He has natural, physical abilities, but there's a lot of things that he's going to be limited on. And then at center, we got Billy Price was the only one that had tape. And guys like Isaiah Wynn and from Georgia, some other people that play tackle. I grade people where they play. I can't watch you play left tackle and grade you as a center. That's not how it works. And so there's people that you might hear are going to be guards or centers, and they're not on my list, but that's because they played tackle this year. And so if they play tackle, I'm going to grade you as a tackle. I'll project you as a guard or a center, but I can't grade you as that. And so the only true center that had, tape was Billy Price out of Ohio State. Love this kid. I can't say a lot, about him that you probably haven't heard. Like, this guy reminds me of Pat Elflein from last year. Of course, his former teammate at Ohio State. They asked to do a lot of the same things. They're coached by the same person. So he's going to remind you of Pat. However, he's a lot stronger than Pat was. That's the key difference. If Pat Elflein had one issue, it was that he didn't have that natural strength of a lineman. He was kind of a smaller, more athletic lineman. Now, great technique and worked in the weight room to be strong, but he just wasn't, lineman strong, as they say. And so Billy Price is built like a brick, and he's naturally strong, and he's just as quick, if not quicker, than Pat Elflein. I love this kid. He's a captain. He's a leader. He's a football player. He's a grinder. He does things the right way. He's like a coach to those people. If you ever watch him in practice or mic'd up, he is absolutely a stud. And so, like I said, he has great quickness. He has great awareness and protection. He's always looking to help. And then we talk about his pad level. I think he can stand up at times because he's like 6'3", 6'4". And so he, same thing. Once you short, you stand up. But I do think he plays with a lot of bend. I think he anchors well, which is the most important thing. His hand placement is good. Now, the only thing with Billy is his hand placement can get wide. He can grab the shoulders at times. And it's a little more than you would like, but he knows when things get tough, his hands has to be in the right place. So if you got a power bully trying to bull rush him, he knows he has to get his hands in the right place. So I have no issue with him there. And he's good in space. There's times where his angles aren't great, but he looks to knock linebackers out of the way. And then his double team and his ability to run block, absolutely strong. The guy's a worker. And I think when his hands get wide, he is a different blocker, though. I don't think he's I would say like a Nelson. So Quinn Nelson from Notre Dame, as I said earlier, when his hands aren't in the right place, he can still bully you because he's naturally that big and strong. I don't think Billy's in the same category. I think when Billy's hands are in the wrong place, you can tell his blocks are a lot less effective. So that's one thing. But for me, I gave him a level 4 pass blocking, level 4.5 run blocking. So those are the guys. I mean, there's a couple people I saw, like one tape of, but I want at least 3 tapes to evaluate you. And so I seen a little bit, but I think outside of Billy Price and the converted guys like Wynn and, other people, I don't think there's going to be too many centers that are going to be, top prospects this year. So that's just kind of how it rolls. But hey, I think this line, I think this group, I would say, interior wise, is stronger than last year. Last year was pretty good, but I just think the guard prospects coming out this year are going to be a lot more intriguing. And the thing people got to realize, especially with centers, is that if you can't play at least 3 positions, it's hard to get drafted these days. If you're just a center, that's going to be an issue. And they want people that can play guard and center. We see like Pat Elflein, he starts for the Vikings. He could have played guard if he wanted to, but he's a center. But even for the Chicago Bears, we got Cody Whitehair, who was a 5-position player. And even though they moved him to center, he ended up being pretty good because they knew he could play there. And then whenever they got injuries, he could play guard. So that's the type of lineman they're looking for. We're moving to a day where you have to be a versatile lineman that can play on both sides in multiple positions, because they don't want to waste roster spots on 2 deep at every position. They want to have guys that are swing. So that's kind of what you're looking at these days. But I think this group is pretty solid. All right. So Yeah, let's jump over to the real grade. And the real grade today is going to be the Oakland Raiders. I will be posting the image so you can kind of follow along. I know it's not easy to see, but we got the 2015 Oakland Raiders. They had 10 draft picks. We got Amari Cooper, of course, still with the team, is a Pro Bowler. We got Mario Edwards, still with the team, starter. Clive Wolford, still with the team, not starting this year, but was a starter. We got John Feliciano, who's still with the team, but doesn't start. Ben Henney has been bouncing around. Neon Ball is out of the league. Max Vallis, out of the league. Anthony Morris, out of the league. Andre DeBose, out of the league. And then we got Dexter McDonald, who is still with the team. And he actually got some starts this year. So we're looking at 10 different players. Out of the 10, you got 5 that are still on your team. So that's a pretty good number. That's what you want. Especially because but the normal is 7 draft picks, of course, for the 7 rounds. So 10 is over the normal, and you got about half of them. So that's not bad. Now, out of the 5 that you still have on your team, you got 2 that you can safely say are starters, and then you got 2 that you can safely say contribute, and then you got 1 that is just a backup. So, out of the 5 that we kept, and one's a star, Amari Cooper, Edwards is a starter, and then, like I said, Wolford, for whatever reason, fell off this year as the starter, but even he contributes, and McDonald contributes, and then Feliciano is just a backup. But the problem comes in when you have, excuse me, the problem comes in is when you have a number of people that are out of the league. Now, not being on your team is one thing, but being out of the league is absolutely different. Some people kind of look at that as the same. If you're talking draft, and I said this before, having players that are no longer in the league 3 years later, that's a big negative. And so to look at the Raiders, who have not 1 and not 2, but you're talking about 4 players that are out of the league, that's a bad draft. That hurts you. And so you have to weigh it, of course, against the star power you got with Cooper, and even the power or the starting power you got with Mario Edwards. You got 1 real game changer out of this group, and weigh that against 4 people out of the league, and then 1, even out of the 4, 2 of those people didn't even make the team that year, so they were cut before the season started. And then you got Ben Henney, who was on the team for 1 year and been bouncing around the league. So in essence, you got 5 players that never really contributed to the team. So that's half the draft. I have to give this draft a C+, and the only reason I'm going to give it a plus is because you got Amari Cooper, who is a star, and he's your first round pick. So you got to hit on that. You didn't get any real value. I mean, like I said, McDonald was really contributing for a 7th round pick this year. So that's good, but that's just this year. The previous 2 years, he didn't do anything. So I got to give it a C+ overall. So that's what I think. But anyway, what do you guys think? Go to the comment section. Let me know what you think about the interior line this year. Any prospects you're excited about for your team. Thumbs up, subscribe, and share this around. Please remember, it's not just for the Bears fans. It's for all the NFL fans. Any fans you know, share this with them. We're going to talk about draft all season, all these prospects. And I want everybody part of the conversation. So that's it for me, and thank you for listening.